Hi everybody, it's your host, Hager, and welcome to another episode of the Dreambubble podcast. A lot has happened since the last episode. Media Molecule is currently at PAX right now, and they announced a lot of really exciting things. But first, joining me, I have two guests, if y'all want to introduce yourselves.
Oh, hi, I'm known as Lady Lex UK. I have a YouTube channel and I have a website called dreamschool.co.uk where I have lots of tutorial content for dreams that I nab off of YouTube.
It's your old pal Lucid Stew. Sorry, I had to do that. I am a console game maker enthusiast. I followed Project Spark for a long time, so naturally I rolled into Dreams as well, and I make YouTube videos about both.
Awesome. So this is the first time I've met you guys, I guess in a call, as close to face as you can get, really. But I'm really excited because both of you have like a Project Spark background, and I practically don't know anything about that game. Like, I know that at some point Conker's Fur Day was there, I think, and it was on the PC/Xbox platform. But I'm excited to learn more about that. But first, let's go over some of the news that came out of Media Molecule. I'm gonna go kind of out of order. So starting off with probably the most exciting news is the early access release date coming out April 16th. Yeah, I'm so excited for that. And we weren't able to talk about early access in the last podcast because I think it was announced shortly after the beta ended. And the last podcast was all about the beta. So, the early access, for anybody who doesn't know yet, Media Molecule is releasing Dreams on the PlayStation Store, and you'll be able to buy basically the game at a discounted price while it's in early access. So it'll be $30. I don't know how many pounds. Do you guys remember?
They didn't actually say. It was one of the ones that they left out, but my understanding is it's $29.99 regardless of what currency you're using.
Oh, okay. I remember seeing a little blurb about it, but I forget. I only look at the price that's relevant to me. How selfish. But so it's gonna be at like a discounted price, and you'll get all the same tools that there were in the beta, essentially. So you won't get the VR tools, you won't get multiplayer, all the stuff that's planned during and after release. You'll just get all the creator tools, kind of like the creator beta. And I thought it was kind of interesting. At first, I thought it was like you had to pay for your opportunity to maybe be randomly selected, but no, if when you pay the price, you'll get essentially the creator beta, and you won't have to buy the game again when it comes out. You'll just own it. But for Dreams, I guess it's a pretty good idea to release it in early access for bug testing, but my initial impressions were like, doesn't this sound just like a second beta to you guys?
Yeah, this definitely sounds to me like they realized that there was going to be a big, long wait before we actually get the full game. And it would be a bit sad to leave it till maybe the end of the year. So I think this is our gift for Media Molecule, so that we're not left with no Dreams for a really long time.
Yeah, up till release that could possibly be like way later this year. Like, I'm not sure if it's even gonna release like later in the summer. I'm gonna predict something like winter. I agree. Just because they have a lot of work ahead of them.
I think it's basically an extended beta, paid extended beta. I would imagine sometime around Christmas time for release.
And I mean, like,
Paid, I think.
Yeah, like we've been like at this point, like a lot of people are still impatient. Like I guess Media Molecule was also like they made an appearance at the Game Developer Conference on main stage, and everybody in the Twitch chat was just like, "Oh, are they gonna announce the? Are they gonna?" This was before they announced the early access date, but everyone was itching for like a big announcement, and I don't know. First of all, it's like you're expecting an announcement at GDC. Not necessarily the place for big announcements like that, but there's still a lot of people that are like super anticipating this and are also kind of impatient. But at this point, it's like even if it comes out like super late this year, still getting the game. Like I've waited so long that like as long as I get the game eventually, I'll be happy. But do you guys feel the same way, or are you guys also getting a little impatient with Media Molecule? to put it lightly.
Well, let me just give you my background on that. I did not have a PlayStation 4 before I heard about the Dreams beta, and I purchased my PlayStation 4 Pro with PSVR specifically for Dreams to be in the beta in 2016. So
so did I. Exactly the same.
Exactly. I haven't just been waiting, man. I've been sitting on $1,000 worth of hardware waiting for this thing to come. I think the two of us...
I posted...
Go ahead.
So I posted on my blog that my PlayStation was sitting there getting dusty because I actually wasn't doing anything with it at all. It was literally just sitting there waiting for Dreams. I didn't even play anything else. Turn it on. It was just sat there.
So in Project Spark, did you guys use Xboxes for that, or did you use PCs?
Used both.
Oh, okay.
Mostly for me, Xbox, because because I'd learned how to do it on the Xbox. I found it a little bit more difficult on the PC. Some people preferred the PC controls, but I preferred to have a controller in my hand. So I did most of my stuff on the Xbox. I built stuff on the Xbox and then finesse type stuff on the PC, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, I get you. And I mean, I personally kill for Dreamsport on the PC, but like it's interesting for me to hear because like there's a lot of people that are going into Dreams who've already either like played Little Big Planet games or just own like PS4s already. So hearing how you guys like have actually been sitting on just a console for Dreams and with this ridiculous development cycle, like that sucks. I thought I had it rough, like buying two PlayStation Move controllers back then, but no, I'm not just like sitting on a huge like piece of hardware.
It's for Pro as well.
Yeah, it hasn't been completely useless to me. I mean, I prefer using it for Netflix over the Xbox One because I just hate my Xbox One. And then I've played a few other games. I had No Man's Sky for a while. My wife played through Last of Us. So it hasn't quite been collecting dust like Lady Lex's, but I really would have loved to spent all that time using it for Dreams.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Like if we actually had the beta in 2016, that would have been great. But they had to remake the game twice. It's all fine. But I thought back to like the GDC talk. So Siobhan Reddy came on stage. I butchered her name in a previous episode. I'm sorry about that. But Siobhan came on stage and I don't know if you guys watched that talk as well, but I thought it was really heartwarming the way she talked about the community while a bunch of creations were shown just like on the main stage of GDC. Like half of the people in the stage don't even know this is a thing yet. But I thought her talk was really nice, even though they didn't announce anything. I thought it was a really nice talk.
My content for Project Spark was actually playable at GDC in 2016, I think it was. So that's not like a new thing for me, but during that video when the UGC came up, yeah, I got a little misty. I gotta admit, I was really proud of everyone who made the content that made that reel. That was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little thing I made popped up for like half a second as well. It's like even though no one like knows who are making these creations, it would be cool if they had the little usernames on the bottom. But I mean, hey, if they're showing a little thing like you made in a couple hours on the main stage of GDC, like don't really have much to complain about.
How cool is it to see yourself in that reel, though, even for a second?
Yeah, it's awesome. Did anything you make come up, Lex? Because I know you made a few cool things in the beta. I played a few of them.
Oh no, nothing of mine went up there.
Oh, that sucks.
It's okay. It's fine. Nothing of mine ended up in a Project Spark reel either, so that's fine. It's fine.
I technically was in there when they showed Server Letters level because I did a lot of the content that he ended up using, but they didn't use anything of mine specifically.
Oh, okay. Well, like one of my favorites from you, Lex, is you made like a character animation test, right? The beer lady holding the big mug. Yeah, I really like that. Not everyone can get in these big show reels, but it's whatever. But
she made the newsletter.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I did.
The newsletter.
I won the game jam. It was like that was the weirdest thing ever. It really was.
Oh,
it was because actually.
Oh, I'm seeing it now. Yeah.
Twitter comment came before I'd even seen the newsletter. So I saw his comment and went, "What? What? Wow. And then I thought, oh, maybe they'd mentioned that that I'd made a list of YouTube creators, or because I'd done that on Twitter recently. I thought maybe they'd mentioned that, or maybe my website or something. I was like, oh, okay. And then I went to the newsletter and it's like, that's my level. That's my picture. Oh, hang on a minute. What? What? I've won a game jam? You've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand that at all. What the hell happened there?
It's funny.
That doesn't make any sense.
I had this email in front of me this whole time, and I didn't scroll down and see guest artist Lady Lex UK. But yeah, I'm seeing that you're the Chinese dish, the noodles and stuff. That's awesome.
Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there were so many great things in that Chinese game jam that I saw. The dragon and the
dragon was
amazing.
Was
there was lots of things that people made that were 1,000 times better than my thing. I can only assume that it's a case of, and this is the way these game jam things works when it's to do with how many people like things. If you make something that's slightly contentious, you're going to get some people that like it and some people that don't. If you make something that's, it's good, but it's, it's not going to offend anybody, you get more likes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So mediocrity wins in those circumstances, unfortunately.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's going to be the case for a lot of competitions, especially fan run ones, where I remember this being the case in some of the LBP competitions I was a part of, where one person spends like 5 more hours on something than someone else, and then the person who spent like 1 hour on it wins. I have a feeling that's going to be a thing because Dreams is just so flexible and you could really do whatever you want. So to avoid that, like with fan competitions and stuff, they're going to have to really narrow down, all right, this is a competition for sculpts and this is a competition for just making games.
Be fair to Lady Lex on this, the sculpt was actually quite good, and I think that's why it won.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at the noodles. I'm looking at the noodles in the bowl, and I'm like, how long did it take you to make those noodles?
The whole level took me about hours.
How many hours?
About 3.
That's really well done. It took me like 3 hours to make like a crappy little cheeseburger. So the fact that you made like a main course, like, that's awesome.
The thing that I spent most time doing was trying to get the lighting right, because it looked okay, but the lighting makes a huge difference to how real things look.
Yeah.
Because you get nice reflections, and if you get the lights in the right place. And it took me ages just fiddling about with adding lights, taking lights, moving lights, and before I got it. So it's like, actually, that looks okay. And it amazed me. I mean, it didn't look particularly real until I put a few lights in, and then, oh, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
I've got something here.
Yeah. What
I intended to make. That was the thing. It wasn't what I was planning on doing at all.
Well, when in doubt, just like make stuff look shiny if you want your thing to look good. That's what Unreal Engine does, just make everything absurdly shiny. But you did a really good job. I didn't know at first you made that, but that's awesome. So GDC happened. Another thing that was happening was the train jam, but we actually, I wasn't able to find actually what they made during the jam. I don't think they linked it anywhere within their newsletter. No. That's a little unfortunate, because the train jam they had last time, I remember there were some pretty cool things that came out of that back in the earlier build of Dreams.
I really haven't been following too much of what they've done since the end of the beta, because what they're doing now mostly is for people who weren't in the beta. It's like, I've already played it. I've already had my hands on it. I don't need to know what it is or what you can do with it anymore. I already know that. Mm-hmm. Just give it back to me.
Yeah, give my child back.
Yeah.
I must say, I've been a bit worried about what they're producing now.
Really?
I don't think they're selling Dreams at all well at the moment. Mm. I think the things that they are making to show off Dreams is just wrong.
Like, are you talking
weird and wacky?
You're talking about the stuff that they're doing right now at PAX, like with the bear riding a motorcycle and like creating things within an hour, like the thing they showed off at the SXSW. Yeah, it's like that kind of stuff is a little bit like, it's a little too weird. I get where you're coming from, because like I think
cute.
the community creations are honestly cooler than what they're showing at like these big events.
There's some pretty weird stuff coming from the community too, though, to be fair.
Yeah, that, I mean, trust me. If you were in the beta, you saw like all the super weird stuff, like that stuff is unavoidable if you're actually playing the game, but it must be a lot of fun if you're at these events and you can just shout out a random thing for them to create and see it on screen. I see that appeal, but seeing it all over like the social media and stuff, and if you have no context, it kind of just looks like a Gary's Mod kind of thing, where it's like people are just randomly throwing stuff at the screen and seeing what sticks, as opposed to really working with a theme like what Kareem does during the live streams. I would prefer to see Kareem's stuff rather than like just random see what sticks.
It was at PSX 2017, so I actually got to see Ed and John demo stuff live. And I think it's really kind of just a product of, or they have to put something together really quick that they can show a beginning and an end to, because they don't have days and days to string together a game. They have to do it right away in front of people.
Yeah. They need to bring people to the stage as opposed to really sell the game and show everything the game has to offer.
I think that's really our responsibility as a community to show what we can do, what you can do when you get your hands on it. Because the way that they're able to package it, I don't think they're able to do that.
Mm-hmm. But
the community really did do that after during the beta when the NDA got lifted. Immediately, all the stuff hit YouTube, hit Twitter, hit everywhere, and it was like, yeah, this is what we can do with it, and it was 1,000 times better. I saw comments like, "Oh wow, I didn't know you could do this with Dreams. I thought it was just cute little bears and things, And that's the trouble that this Media Molecule seem to be obsessed with creating cute little bears and cute little cubes and things that are quite kid-like. And it's like, well, it's nice. I got nothing against that. Not sure that the audience that would really benefit from making stuff in Dreams are going to be attracted by a dancing cube. That's.
I think the main thing is showing the breadth of things that you can make rather than concentrating on one little thing. So, like Lady Lick says, the cute stuff is fine, and people are going to want the game for that. But people also want the game to be able to make stuff like Disarm Pro makes.
Yeah.
Oh God, would we all like to make stuff like Disarmed Pro makes? Be able to have that talent. I mean, my God, is he just one guy on his own does all of that as well?
Yeah, he was on the last episode actually. It's just him just messing with the engine. He has like a ton of time on his hands, and he was able to make all that stuff. I'm definitely jealous. He has worked with other people on a few of those. Some of those are just real small demo levels. It's still amazing that he was able to put them together within 7 weeks, but it's a fairly small area. On was Visceral in particular, he had a little bit of help since it had a little bit more to it.
I would have liked to see more of that game because early, didn't it? It was made quite early on, and it wasn't developed more, or was it? I don't know. Was it developed any more than making other stuff?
I'm not sure. They might have, like, when they first released it, I bet he updated it a few times, as with any creation, just stomping out bugs. But I think Disarmed, because I did talk to him a little bit while everybody was creating in the beta. I think it was just like moving on to the next project. I know, like, we spent a lot of time like making a first person like perspective camera for like a first person shooter, and we spent like, I want to say, a couple days troubleshooting that. It was Disarmed and his friend Rothniel mainly like doing all the work, and then Rothniel eventually like Prometheus is that is the first person shooter level, right? Or am I thinking of something else?
That was
okay. So they both spent a lot of time working on that. And when they were describing all the difficulties with it, I decided to give it a shot, and I failed because of a bug within the game. But I think once they have basically something playable, Disarm would like move on to like another passion project. So I don't think they spent a lot of time like adding new levels or anything like that. They could very well do that when the full game comes out, if they don't start a new project. But
I think there's a danger in Dreams is that there's so much you can do, and you'll get so excited because you end up all sorts of things, because that's what I was doing. I was trying everything out, and I never finished hardly anything.
Yeah.
It was just try this. Oh, I want to move on. Try that. I want to do that. Oh, hang on. I've got a great idea. I want to make this. it's really hard, I think, to actually sit down and concentrate on one thing.
Yeah,
because there's too much. There's too much to do.
Even if you go into it like thinking you know what you're gonna make with a main concept, that easily spirals into something completely different, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But you know what happened to the original thing you want to make? Like you started off like making fish assets for this bigger project, but then the fish assets became so funny they like became their own game. Like that happened to me specifically, just as a specific example. But
going was completely different than what I had planned, and the assets that I made were not even assets that I was interested in making for anything that I was going to do.
You just made assets for making assets' sake.
I started making a couple for Serverletter's project and some other things just to see if people would use them, and then it all kind of fit into a concept, and so I started building around that concept, and then I built a world for all the stuff in the concept to go into. Beta was pretty much over by the time I got to that point.
Oh yeah. Yeah, just they extended the beta so much too. Like imagine if they didn't extend the beta, like how different our impressions would be of the full game.
I tell you what, it took me 3 weeks to be able to do anything at all, really.
Yeah.
The first 3 days, I was at one point I was in tears, quite frankly, because I was like, why can't I do this? Literally not do any of this. I can't control my imp. I can't make anything. I can't build anything. I don't know what I'm doing. I looked at the logic and it was like, I'm lost.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. It was terrible. I was really, really frustrated. I'm posting on the forums like, why can't I get this? Why don't I understand this? I'm good at this sort of thing. Why can't I do this? What's wrong with me? And I was quite relieved, actually, that other people went, oh, no, I feel the same way. It was like, oh, thank God, because I thought it was on my own.
Yeah.
It genuinely felt like I was the only person in the world to get dreams and not be able to control my imp with the tilting of the controller. It just seemed alien and weird.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do it.
Yeah. It was the same. It was the exact same for me. So that beta came out while I was on winter break, so I had all the time in the world to do whatever the heck I wanted. But I would constantly join a party chat with like 3 to 4 other friends, all of us who've played Little Big Planet. And the first week was us honestly just hating on the game because we couldn't figure it out. And we were constantly just like trying to help each other. But the magical thing about it was when we did finally figure something out, we were able just to share it with everybody, and that helped us learn it a little bit quicker. But the learning curve in this game is way steeper than you'd think it is, and way steeper than Media Molecule kind of makes it out to be. And that could prove to be an issue for the game, especially new people who literally have no experience in other UGC games. It's going to be rough.
It felt this, but I definitely felt that having played a lot of Project Spark, I was actually, because I'm used to picking objects up and moving them around and tilting them and rotating them in a certain way using certain buttons. And all of a sudden, there was completely different buttons. Mm-hmm. And if I did the same technique that I would use in Project Spark to move something, it was completely wrong for Dreams. And I kept holding down buttons when I didn't need to. Because in Project Spark, you have to hold the button down in order to rotate things. You have to keep pressed down. And I kept doing that, and it was the wrong thing to do. And that was half the reason why I was struggling so much, was because I kept doing Project Spark moves.
Yeah.
Because automatically, because I've been doing it for 5 years. I mean, it's really hard to get out of the habit.
Yeah, and I was actually going to ask about that. I was curious because like I came from an LBP background. Everyone I played the game comes from an LBP background. But of course, the forums are full of people from Project Spark, from Minecraft, from Roblox, from all different backgrounds. So I was gonna ask, like, how was the transition between going from Project Spark to Dreams, where not only are they two separate games, but they're from two separate developers. So, like, hearing about, like, you have to break bad habits from Project Spark, like...
It's just a different controller.
Yeah, that's true.
It was a little different.
It's not even Xbox.
It was a little
controller.
different for me because Project Spark in a couple of years now, so I've completely forgotten the control scheme, and it wasn't, you know, like that legacy didn't hold over for me. So I don't think I had as much of a problem with the controls as Lady Lex did. The ironic part with those is I got really used to using the motion controls to my advantage. Ended, but it was a struggle until
I haven't got any of those.
Oh yeah.
I haven't got any of those. I've only used the DS4.
I've honestly mostly used the DS4 as well. You don't need.
I mean, using the gyro in the DS4 to your advantage rather than fighting it.
It took a while to just get the whole idea of not the joysticks on the controller to move things and actually tilting the controller to move things was a bit alien. It's a bit weird.
Yeah, the Media Molecule has confirmed they're working on a non-motion control scheme, because there were so many people complaining, like, because the motion controls in this game aren't bad at all. They honestly work fairly well, but because it's motion controls, you inherently have the issue of, like, well, I want to be able to place this thing, but I have the shakiest hands in the world. And, like, a ton of people were even like, hey, can we just get keyboard and mouse support? Like, I'm a designer who uses Photoshop every day, and I would love keyboard and mouse. And I'm glad they are working on a non-motion control version, just because I don't want to constantly be, like, waving my controller around. But
I thought we got used to it, though. I think I know everybody complained, but I think once you got used to it, it was actually better than just pushing buttons and things. I could see why they did it, but it's not an instant thing. It's not like you can pick it up and immediately be able to do it. You have to learn a whole new of using your controller, which was weird. That was
the thing that killed me all the way till the end was the imp drift.
Yep.
The analogy I came up for that was like, it was like trying to serve someone a drink on a tray while you're on a fishing boat. Sometimes I would literally be leaning into something trying to get it to fit, and it just didn't want to because the imp wanted to fly off the edge of the screen.
I never had that. I had very little imp drift. I mean, I would sense the imp every now and then, but I didn't get what everybody else was complaining about. I'm guessing it is to do with posture and how you control it in your hand. I mean, I know I lean my controller over slightly. I know it's leaning slightly to the left most of the time. So maybe that was counteracting all the drift. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm doing that because the puppetry in the mannequins, their heads were constantly in weird positions because I had to actually cut the wire on all of my mannequins because the heads would just be all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, I'd consider yourself lucky. Like, whatever posture you're working with, stick with it if it stops in drift, because...
Make a video about that.
Like, this is how you avoid imp drift. Just...
I didn't avoid it, it's just it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like... I didn't have anything flying off. I did at the beginning because I couldn't control the damn thing. But once I got used to it, but I didn't get the constant drift that everybody else seemed to be experiencing. Not that I didn't get it at all, because of course I did, but it wasn't like a major deal for me. It wasn't like a deal breaker.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say it was a deal breaker for me, but it was literally like every once in a while, like either once or twice every hour, I'd say, for like a solid 2 minutes, your imp is just drifting to the right and there's nothing you can do about it. You can like maybe set your controller down and take a break, but why take a break when I'm in the middle of creating this thing? I'd rather push through the imp drift and like pull back on it, constantly resetting the controller, rather than, you know, get a sandwich or like get some orange juice.
Deal for me though is I was getting pain in my shoulder from the concentration and the small movements. It was putting pain in my shoulders, and that has actually turned into something a bit major and horrible for me.
Really? Jeez, that's so rough. I'm sorry for that.
It's a little bit worrying. And my chiropractor was like, I explained that I've got this new game and this is what I'm doing, and he looked at me with horror on his face. Like, oh, is there any way you can not do it? And I'm like, he said, well, how long are you going to be playing this game for? I said, about 8 hours. And he went, what? I said, there's no point in me lying to you. No, I'm going to be playing this game for 8 hours. That's what's going to be happening. I know that. There's no point in me lying to you. He was absolutely like, right, well, you're going to have to take breaks every 15 minutes. It's like, you serious?
I ended at level 63 with all of my data getting wiped out by a hard crash when I was at level 12. So I spent enough time to get into the 70s. And with that amount of time, I was really starting to get kind of the equivalent of carpal tunnel.
Jeez.
My thumb has gone numb, and I don't know whether that has got anything to do with it. It is bad, and as I understand it, that might possibly be carpal tunnel. It's concerning to me. Plus, I had 3 migraines while playing Dreams, so I had to stop. So it's like,
you have Dreams thumb.
At this point, it's like, all right, you can maybe improve the controls a little bit, but this is how dedicated these Dreams fans are. We're willing to get migraines, carpal tunnel. We're gonna ruin our posture and become like hunchbacks because of Dreams.
This game is evil. It's going to ruin me. Project Spark was evil enough, and now we've got this. It's like next level of evil for me. No, it's gonna ruin me. I'm gonna be a wreck. I've got to try very hard to improve my posture, get up, move about, not stare at the screen for hours on end, because you don't realize the time.
Yeah,
I don't know if you both have the same. You're doing something. You don't. Yeah, you're doing something. You go. I thought, right, okay, I'll give it a half an hour, and then I'll stop and get myself a cup of tea or something, and I'll walk about and right. And then I looked at the clock on my computer screen, and it was 2 hours.
Yep.
I'm like, what happened? How have I lost an hour and a half here? I don't understand. Literally, it felt like half an hour, and it was 2 hours. And that's the sort of thing that happens when you play Dreams.
Yeah.
What I would do is most of the time when I can play is late at night. And I would say, okay, I'm going to sit down at about 10 and I'll play till about 1. And around the time that I felt like I was ready to be done, I'd look at the clock and it'd be like 3:30 or 4 o'clock.
Yeah, that was exactly me. It was crazy. I don't know what's going to happen on the 16th. Like, I'm in college right now. It's going to be really rough trying to balance schoolwork with Dreams. Not going to lie.
Coffee.
Housewife. I'm at home. I have no job. So this is, like I say, this evil thing is going to take over my life. My house is going to be filthy dirty. There's going to be piles of washing and the carpets are not going to get vacuumed and nothing is going to get done because I'm going to be on this game. My husband knows because this is what happened with Project Spark, so he's prepared.
I work full time. I go to school part time, and my big plan is I'm just not going to sleep very much.
You know, of all the things to sacrifice, the two probably best to sacrifice for dreams out of everything is probably social life and sleep, because you need money, you need your education. I mean,
and you need dreams.
And you need dreams. So
what do you mean social life? This is my social life. This is my social life. This is how I meet people. This is how I get to talk to other human beings that are not my husband. This is the only time.
No, that's actually awesome.
This is it.
When I first moved to England, this was when I was way younger. That was what Little Big Planet was for me, to meet new people back when I had no friends. It's so, and honestly, the social network in Dreams, I'm really excited for. Because you'll be able to see dreams on indreams.me and like queue them up for later. So if by any chance you're like away from your console, you can still kind of browse, see what's being made, and then like add them to a list so you can play them later. Little Big Planet had that as well. Little Big Planet 2 and 3 had that. But they were kind of limited in that, well, yeah, there was kind of a social network, but all you could really do is just see what levels there are and like queue them up. It seems like for indreams.me, you'll be able to actually like edit your profile and edit descriptions and like create playlists for yourself other than just play later.
Did you use it much? Because I used it a lot.
I used it just to see what was new. But you weren't actually able, like, we didn't have the function to add them to a queue list. But I did use it just to browse, just to catch up, because it got to the point when they added new people to the beta where you couldn't just play through everything like you could when the beta first came out. So to catch up on some of the like models I missed and stuff, I would just scroll through, look at the thumbnails.
I did some maths and I was a bit concerned about the numbers because according to the numbers that Media Molecule gave out, we were roughly putting out 32 creations an hour. And that's 20,000 people. 32 creations an hour. You get 1,000 people. That's 798 creations an hour. The chances of your level being spotted is going to be so hard.
That's where the curators come in. That's where the curators and going on YouTube and making content and all that and taking responsibility for the curation is going to come in. And the community really is going to need to embrace that big time in order for it to work.
Mm-hmm. The idea of a small little communities within a big one, so that the people that have particular interests can get together and form like little groups or different types of, I mean, I know that there's going to be groups for each country, possibly. Mm-hmm. Platformers, I can imagine people, forming a little group just to discuss other platforming games that are on the, and promote them amongst themselves. And because I don't think it's going to be possible for you to do it on your own, to be honest. I think a certain level of collaboration is going to be necessary.
Mm-hmm. There's
even
already,
if it's just marketing.
Yeah, and I've already seen people making these groups on specifically Dreambubble. I haven't checked the other forums, but people are already like starting to make groups and stuff, and I seriously think that forums are going to be a way bigger part of Dreams than they were for at least Media Molecule's last games. I don't know how prevalent forums were for stuff like Project Spark.
You're talking to the right two people about that.
Yeah.
Her and I were so crazy on ProjectSpark.com forums that Me and one other creator accounted for 10% of all the posts on that forum.
I think I had the highest amount of posts than anybody. I think, and I joined
we were
it.
A little crazy.
That's
joined
awesome.
it.
I love it.
What was a bit scary about that is that I was so enthusiastic about it all, and I was so excited about posting things all over the place that I managed to actually get higher than the person that was in front before within of being on the forum.
Oh.
So they'd been on it like a year, and I just wiped them.
I just want to point out. I just want to point out her level of dedication to Project Spark, because it was really remarkable. In the way that the word is meant to be used. Nearly single-handedly, she made a manual for the game.
Yeah, I wrote a manual.
Everything else she did. It's just mind-blowing.
Wasn't the only thing I did, though. That's the thing. I had 3 websites.
3 websites for one game?
Yeah, I had one website. One website was tutorials and an encyclopedia of the tiles that you use, the logic coding language that it was used. Mm-hmm. So it was a description of how all those worked. So there was that. There's this, and there was a review site, all the games and review them. So all the games that were launched and were featured were all reviewed, and I gave them all star ratings, and I had lists of games you might be interested in playing, and I categorized everything. So there was that website, and then there was another website which was for design ideas, and so how you make props and things in Project Spark, which is a very specific skill. So I had another website for that.
I'm trying to wrap my head around it, because towards the how many people would visit these sites, especially towards the end of Project Spark? Did you start losing motivation when there was a big drop off?
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. Actually, my website got hacked in the March 2016. And at that point, I think they had just made the announcement that that they were going to pull it, and just left it. I didn't bother putting it back up. But at that point, I mean, I didn't have huge numbers. I mean, it was a couple of thousand, I suppose. It wasn't massive.
Mm-hmm.
And Project Spark in general, the usage kind of peaked right when they technically released the game, and then it just slowly dropped off pretty steadily until the end.
Yeah.
How many do you think there were? Because I've tried really hard to work this one out, and I have a horrible feeling it's quite a low number.
I think the core usership for Project Spark was probably in the range of about 10,000 people, and that maybe at some point 500,000 people had tried it in some way.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I think. The level that got the most plays, the highest level, got just under 250,000, and that's individuals that played it. So that's not how many times it was played. That's how many different individuals played that game. And there was a point when they had a tutorial thing that I think you had to play it. It was one of the so okay. I'm not 100% sure how many above that there were, and how long they were around, because I think quite a lot of people tried it, didn't like it, didn't come back.
They used this one particular UGC upload as a marketing tool where they could say, hey, this level's had 250,000 players, but they kind of manipulated it a little bit so that people would play it over time, as opposed to other games that would just drop off the lists where they plays.
Okay.
Thing was, and I think this is probably the same for Little Big Planet, and I is that a level that is early on in the game's life cycle,
So
that does well.
So
Snowballs.
Yeah, like I'm trying to think of the most played. I think I remember the most played Little Big Planet 1 level was like some Dead Space level somebody made. I forget the exact numbers it got, but levels in Little Big Planet, there was a snowball effect where a lot of like if you made like basically a hit in Little Big Planet, then you're basically guaranteed to have every level you make in Little Big Planet be a hit. It was kind of like this kind of YouTube like viral kind of mentality. Now, Media Molecule, they did have what they called a MM Picks list, where it's their personal list. They go on weekly and choose like maybe two to three or four levels, I want to say, to add to the MM Picks, just because they were levels that they liked, and the only award people got for it was like a little banner around the level, and then of course a list that was easily accessible by everybody. But I don't think Media Molecule ever did like a marketing push with user-generated content other than the early game jams, like beta game jams, kind of like what they're doing with Dreams now. It's weird to think that developers are like depending on like not even a community but specific creations to push their game. I didn't realize that was a strategy for Project Spark. It's really interesting.
Well, they used to do something similar. They used to have featured games that would be very prominent. When you went into the community feeds, there would be these featured games for the week. Some of them stayed in there just a week. Some were in there for a fortnight. Some of them were in for like, there was one game that I swear was in there for 8 weeks. That because it was the only game that ever had that sort of publicity. And it always seemed a little bit unfair, actually, because there was loads of games that could have been featured. Why is this game keeps being featured over and over and over and over and over? It didn't make any sense to me, but it's their decision. It's their game. If Team Dakota wanted to feature this particular game, that was up to them, I guess.
Yeah, I guess
that's kind of why I like the curation aspect of Dreams, is because it takes the power out of the developer's hand to promote content, and it really puts the onus on us. And that gives us a little bit more power to kind of try to show other people, what is good. Here's good content that's worth playing.
Yeah.
Are we expecting Media Molecule to continue their streams like they did during the beta? Is that going to be a thing, or is that just?
I hope, because I love when developers live stream their games. I follow a bunch of indie developers that regularly live stream either them developing their games or just playing with the community. But I predict Media Molecule might fall off of that because they've been mostly using it to really. I mean, it's their response to like fan demand, and it's really like the only way they were able to show off Dreams, like while they were developing it in the past. But I have a feeling, especially when they go beyond Dreams and start working on their next project, whatever Sony demands them to make, I have a feeling those streams are going to drop off, and they're going to more feature community streams. Like the community manager, whoever's running the Twitter over at MM, they would just retweet when someone popular is playing Dreams on a live stream. I think it's going to resort to that more than direct Media Molecule streams. I'm sure they'll do more. It just won't last very long.
Because Team Dakota used to do a regular of community stuff that they liked, and that was it didn't get a lot of plays. It was like a few hundred it started off a few thousand, and it sort of went down and down and down.
Yeah.
But where they would play levels that they'd picked out that they really liked, and to be honest, as a creator, it was great because there's something amazing about seeing the developer that's made the game that you play your level and get excited about it. Amazing. You feel absolutely amazing when that happens. And it would be a shame if Media Molecule stopped doing that, because it was really nice to see all the levels that they picked out, and knowing that I picked out the similar levels as well for my picks of the week and whatever, that I made like little what do you call them? Old now. What are they? The collections. I'd make a collection in Dreams of games that I liked. And it was nice to see that they picked the similar ones and ones that I'd never seen as well. And it was like, oh wow, I hadn't seen that one. How come how did I miss that? You know?
Another cool thing about both of the developers of Project Spark and Dreams is that you can see that they've pulled people out of the community to work for them. So in the instance of Project Spark, there were 3 guys that ended up working under the community manager, and we got in, were making UGC as part of the community. So they went from the community to working for Team Dakota, just like John and Steve Big Guns and the other people that have made that leap.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if people from Dreams haven't already been considered just based on the beta. But one big question I have for both of you. So like Project Spark obviously had like a big falling out, especially when the developers stopped supporting it. What would be, if you could sit down with just anyone from Media Molecule and give them some advice, what advice would you give them when it comes to supporting Dreams and like keeping it alive, even as like the big like player peak has already been passed?
I think Dreams has really already done it. I mean, the major problem with Project Spark was that they would not provide the content that the community wanted. We were stuck in this kind of fantasy kitty swirly and could not get out of it. So that was what you had to make, and that was what you had to work with. Whereas with Dreams, you are not restricted. You can make anything you want. A huge issue that will help them out.
Gotcha.
The reason that Project Spark just went, like Lucid said, it was a case of they seemed to be making stuff that they wanted, things, and they weren't really thinking about how they would be used by community players, creators. So we had a situation where, although that they were pushing fantasy, there were lots of fantasy things missing. Like there's no wizards. Because we want some wizards, you know, old guys with beards, you know, wizards, right? There wasn't any, and they said, "Oh, we'll give you a wizard," and they gave us this teenage boy wearing a pith helmet. It was weird.
I think I recognize that character from a video I watched from you. Is it like the default Project Spark?
Seth. His name was Seth. What a weird name. It was a weird name, and it was a weird character, and we were like, no, that's not what we wanted. You misunderstood. That's not what we wanted. When we say wizards, we're talking, you know, Gandalf and that sort of thing. Yeah. Dumbledore. That's what we want. That's the sort of wizard we're after. And they didn't give it to us. We wanted 4-legged creatures. And that is another thing in Dreams that is missing. Is they've given us a nice mannequin to build on, but they haven't given us 4-legged mannequin to build on. And you can make it, and I know that people have made it, but you need skills to do that. And I think Dreams, although everything can be remade and everybody can share it, and we can all, the community can to do these things, it would have been nice if there was an official little 4-legged mannequin, then all of us could build and make cats and dogs and wolves and dragons and whatever else we want to make.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's something they've got to think. It's like, what would help make it easier to make the things that people want to make, work around things and try and make things in a complicated way, because I think the animation and the puppetry side of it is not what I expected, because they made it look as if you could puppet to make movies and things, and you could, but it's not as easy as they made out. They're a lot harder to animate their mannequins, because I thought they would have, like they did in Little Big Planet, where you could push the different buttons and your left arm would go up and your right arm would go up and you change your expression and all of that. I thought they would have that in there, and it's not there.
I mean, it's kind of there. It's like, because you can use the action recorder and basically hook up the action to like whatever puppet you're controlling, but you do have to make the puppet first, especially if you don't want to like use just all the default stuff that the regular mannequins come with.
But one thing I think that needs to be pushed and put out there and just reinforced time and time again is that the amount of things that Dreams can do is really too big for a single person to do themselves if you're trying to make a real game. And you're going to need to collaborate. You're going to need to use other people's assets. You're going to need to learn to share and integrate things into your projects. And that's how you're going to make things, rather than trying to make everything yourself. And that will make things a lot easier.
Absolutely. I am a little bit, I'm not 100% sure, and I'm going to have to do some experiments with this, about transferring things like animations and movement, puppet movement between characters, because I have a feeling that when you make a puppet character and you put some animations in there, say you're building a knight character and he's got a sword and you've got him swinging his sword and what have you, you can't just take the logic you've made and pop it into another puppet, so that puppet also has the sword swinging animation. That's something you could do it in Project Spark, but I don't think you can do it in Dreams as easily.
The keyframe should be portable between characters. I think the main thing there is going to be that if you're trying to move keyframes from one character to another, they're going to have to be fairly similar build. Otherwise, you're going to get some clipping that's going to look weird, and then you might have to adjust the keyframes.
Yeah,
I tried it. Have you tried it? Did it work? Did you try taking keyframes from one pack to another?
I didn't mess with characters at all, but just based on the concept of keyframes, it should be totally portable.
That'd be a thing we'd have to test with the early access. Like I'd figured, just like from like an engine standpoint, if you have two characters and they just use the regular like biped, like they both originated from the biped, you'd figure, because like Media Molecule has like a whole like skeletal structure, that it would be able to transfer easily. But there's a lot of stuff that we saw in the beta that like kind of just small like key features, kind of like this one, that kind of didn't exist. Like just a bunch of little stuff, kind of like how some gadgets couldn't have more than 10 like outputs, like just kind of silly stuff like that, where it seems like they were more oversights than, oh, we can't add that to the game. I'm sure that Media Molecule has a huge list of just stuff they forgot about, including, quadrupeds. I really hope someone over there is working on a quadruped, because a lot of people like making cats and dogs, like you said, Lady Lex. So I don't know.
Wolves. And horses, cows.
Here's the thing. I didn't mess with characters very much, but I did take a look at them. And really, a character is just a collection of connectors.
Is it really?
Attached to them. Yeah, it's just a collection of connectors with sculpts attached to them. So that they have to do is they have to be able to connect in the character logic that we have now to a different type of skeleton made up of those thing. So I think that'll take a little bit of work, but it's not like something that they can't do.
Yeah.
All of these things can be done, but I think it's complicated. I think it's a difficult skill. I don't think it's I don't think it's something that everybody's going to be able to do, which is why I think having more standard things in there. I mean, I am surprised that there is no attack animation in the mannequin, because that would have made a huge difference for everybody.
That's why I think that goes back to the idea of specializing a little bit and not trying to do everything yourself. And people who are really into animation are going to animate things, and they're going to upload their animations, and you're going to be able to reuse those animations. If you're not very good at animation, the better thing is probably just not to who's better at it and use their work.
Yeah.
It's going to get very frustrating to start with, though. That's the thing.
Yeah,
because you're going to want to make that game, and you won't be able to because you can't do it.
Media Molecule is relying a lot on everybody wanting to share in the community, and I think a lot of people aren't necessarily going to do that. There are going to be a lot of people like making their own tutorials, like Lex is already doing with her website, and like sharing just like basic models that they've made themselves. But I do think that it's not necessarily like plug and play right now, and if you rely on the community to do stuff, then like standards aren't going to be set. So I think Media Molecule, like if Media Molecule had just an easy logic gadget you could slap on a biped that has open slots where you can plug in attack animations and just hook up an easy button to that animation. I think that would do the game a lot of justice.
If you consider this is that they are using the same tools we are, so nothing that they are going to do is anything that we can't.
True, but I think it will at least like it's a reliable thing for new players to like get grips with. Like it's reliable, and it's like Media Molecule would be able to make it foolproof, where if two community members, one who makes animations and one who makes this like their version of like a plug and play basic model, so, like I imagine those things won't necessarily just work 100% together, especially if those creators aren't communicating with each other. So
that's also
finding it as well. It's that people are going to make these things. Wider public playing the game going to be able to find these plug and play things? How easy is it going to be to find it? If it was a Media Molecule made thing and they had like kits, like little, you want to make a platformer, here is a kit. You want to make a first person shooter, here's a kit. You want to make, I think actually looking at the trailer and the things that are saying that it might actually be coming.
Here's the
looking on that.
Here's the thing, though, that I would say philosophically, if you think about it, if they do it, someone in the community then will not be able to. You have removed that person from the community because then they're not going to want to do it. So I think relying on Media Molecule to do things for us is the wrong way to go. The better way is for us to do it, us to purposely make it so that other people can use it, and for us to promote each other making so that people do actually find out about it.
If the community is willing to just play nice with each other, and I don't have any doubts that can't be the case, because in the beta, there was a ton of collaboration happening in the beta, and a bunch of remixing and just improving other people's work, and using other people's work within your own creations. I don't have a doubt that like people won't that people can't play nice within the community, but like it is something to consider. Like it's either having Media Molecule set all the standards or letting the community do it for them. If it depends on if the community like are gonna play nice with each other and are willing to create these standards for other people. And I mean, personally, I don't think I'm going to make anything that I'm going to like make for the sole purpose of helping other people out. I'm just going to stick with my own creations and like try to make everything from scratch for myself. And like that's just because I'm a selfish creator. Like in the Little Big Planet games, I wouldn't let anyone like copy my work. I didn't have any of my work copyable. That's just how I am. So
I don't know if you're aware, but in Project Spark we didn't have the option.
Everything was
shareable.
copyable. Really? Okay. That sounds like it was awful. That sounds like it was horrible.
It was horrendous. Amount of forum topics on that topic was just extraordinary. Everybody was, and when it comes to remixing, let me tell you that it nearly killed Project Spark stone dead, because all that was happening was people were remixing people's levels, maybe changing the name of it, but that was it.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even change the name.
Quite often they wouldn't even change the name, right? It would be just an exact copy of somebody else's level and they would put it up there. And everybody said, well, it doesn't matter. Why does it matter? You know, the original creator gets the benefit of any of the plays, blah, blah, blah. Right. You've made hours and hours and hours and hours of creative time to make a game, and then 30 people get your plays that should be on your game, should be added to your total, which isn't. Obscurity, because it's been wiped off the feed by all these copies of your game. It's just the most annoying thing.
Yeah,
these 0% copies of the game. It was just plague.
Yeah, it was
an absolute plague.
Just absolute plagiarism. And the funny thing is, it's kind of amazing hearing this, like hearing how the Project Spark community, like nothing was private. Because in Little Big Planet, it's kind of like how Dreams is right now, where you can either publish it where people can only play it, or publish it to where people would copy it. And even with that added option, Little Big Planet was full of like the same kind of stuff, except the Little Big Planet version was everyone was making bomb survivals, where bombs would just fall from the sky and you have to survive. And they were copying like the same Mortal Kombat levels, like multiple times, like how you were explaining, and just like posting basically just the same thing from other creators over and over. The only difference in Little Big Planet is that it was more deliberate, because these creators were allowing other people to copy and plagiarize off their work. So, I mean, that might be a thing that happens in Dreams, like, because there is an option for copying a level, and you could easily just post it again.
And they will.
One thing I'd like to see in Dreams, because in the beta we saw that a lot of people did lock their content, and I can definitely understand that. And if I ever make a full game in Dreams, I'm going to lock it as well for a time. But what I'd like to see is something like where after your content's been out for a while, you release it to the general public to use, so that everyone else can use your assets as well. Because, you know, after your game's been out for 6 months, not that many people are going to be playing it anymore. There's not too much point in having it completely exclusive. So let other people use it as well. But at the same time, I do understand.
I don't think I don't see why anybody would launch a level as remixable at all. The things that should be fixable, usable, etc., are the assets. So if you make some characters, props, scenery, pieces, that sort of thing, available for everybody to use, that's the things they should be able to use. What they shouldn't be able to use is your game. Cannot see any reason whatsoever to have access to your game mechanics, other than to just copy your game. So why have it? I launched a game. I launched it as playable only, and then I launched all of the assets that I had made for that game as separate assets for people to use. So the character was an asset, and the trees and the rocks, the whatever, all of those things were assets for people to use. But my game is my game. I don't think anybody should feel guilty about not giving it out to the general public to use, because you've put something into that. That is your game. That is your game with your game mechanics and your skill. And I don't think it's fair that somebody else should then just copy it straight out. However, having said that, I'm the sort of person that likes to share everything that I've learned how to do. So I would be making assets which has got game and mechanics in it so that people can use it. And I'll be making tutorials and say, this is how I made this, which I think is the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I'm ever going to be releasing a game and making it remixable, because I don't think that is the right way to share.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Just as long as they need to make it not so easy, just 2 clicks and they've reposted. Like, the people who actually care about these projects that they're seeing and want to make their own version, there has to be they have to show effort to put into it, to show their dedication towards that kind of project, and following tutorials that people make to learn how to do the same thing, but for them to actually do the work. That's the way to do it. But as the beta stood, I feel like, yeah, unless someone has it set to only playable, you could just 2 clicks and repost.
And we don't want that.
Yeah, no.
I don't see why anybody would want that. That's not what sharing and collaboration is about. It's not about nicking somebody else's stuff. It really isn't. It is a different. Media Molecule have very similar ethos to what was. Project Spark had the idea that it was a sharing. People refer to it in the forums as a hippie idea, that everything you make is everybody's. Yeah. It did annoy a lot of people, and people wanted to be able to protect the stuff they made, to the point that some people said, I'm not making anything on this platform anymore because I can't protect it, because I can't make it just mine. Mm-hmm. And they said, stuff it. I don't want to make things anymore because it's being stolen all the time and I'm not getting the acknowledgement anymore. So forget it. I'm going. I'm not going to make on this platform anymore. And that would be a thing I would say to Media Molecule. You've got to make sure that people do not feel like they're being taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. Their creative work is their creative stuff. It's theirs. It's acknowledged.
They made it, and everybody knows they made it. Like artists want to feel recognized for the work that they make. So if you completely strip that, well, artists aren't going to want to make anything.
An idea that was come up with, and I think it's a decent idea, I'm not sure if they'll be able to pull it off technically, was to be able to lock your content, but to allow it to be inspected so that people can see what you did and learn from how you did it without being able to just outright copy it.
Mm-hmm. I think that'd be... I'm in support for that kind of thing, but...
I might be wrong about this, but my take, and having done lots of stuff on Project Spark, is that people were not learning by breaking into other people's games and having a look, because yes, you go into somebody else's game and have a look at their code. If they're not the most meticulous developer in the world, you haven't got the foggiest clue what they've done. Not a clue. It's a complete mess. It would take you longer to work out what they've done than for you to sit there and work out how to do it yourself.
I have an example of that. I remixed a level called Lunar Lander in Project Spark into Mars Lander, And at that point, I was pretty accomplished with Project Spark, pretty comfortable with it, knew what I was doing. The guy who made the level that I was remixing was a professional programmer. He laid out everything so that it was very easy to figure out what he did. And it still took me 3 hours game so that I could remake it.
Yeah.
I've been asked to go into people's games to help them because they've got stuck. Like, can you help me with my code? And I've gone in and had a look, and I'm like, what in the world? What?
Yeah.
Why did you do that? Why have you built that way? Why? And it's really difficult to actually help people, even when you see the way they've coded stuff, the way they've built stuff, because everybody builds stuff and makes stuff their own way. You go into somebody else's level, it's going to be the same in Dreams. There is no one way of making a particular game mechanic. There's going to be loads of ways to do it, loads of different ways. And in fact, I think in Dreams it's going to be even more so than it was in Project Spark. I think Project Spark, you probably had 2 or 3 ways of doing it. I think in Dreams there's going to be so many ways of doing the same thing. I think it's going to be very, very difficult for you to go into a level, look at it, and suddenly understand how to make something.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be possible. So why bother with the looking?
I mean, I like the idea of looking because I was able to remix. It was actually kind of the same theme of like Lunar Lander, but I was able to remix someone's level where you flew around in a UFO and you abducted cows. The first version they made of that had completely awful controls. So I thought, just, I'll remix this real quick, just remap some of the buttons, and then it'll be a nice quick update. I spent like a good hour, just a game about flying around a planet and picking cows up, a good hour just trying to figure out just how they laid stuff out. Like their logic wasn't like incorrect and it wasn't super messy, but it was like, I had to spend a good bit learning how they even made it. And the only way I was able to do that is because I was at that point familiar with how the logic system worked. So the inspect mode would not be a solution for someone who just wants to learn how to create things. It'd only be a thing to where if someone who like played the game regularly just wanted to know how you made something, then they'd be able to inspect it. So for people to learn, like actually learn how to like solve an issue, they'd either have to like look up a tutorial, like ask a friend about it, or even just like hopefully they'll be able just to learn from the media molecule tutorials that they do. So like I'm on board with the idea of being able to see how people made stuff without copying their work, but that's not necessarily a solution for like people who want to learn how to make stuff, because they need to know how everything works to begin with.
I think from that angle, it's going to take someone who really knows what they're doing to be able to rip the level apart and show other people how it's done. Mm-hmm. You could have something like Lady Lex did a lot with Project Spark, where she would take a mechanic from a AAA game and try to figure out how to reproduce it.
That's awesome. That's a really cool idea. And
I did. I used to do an awful lot of those, and let me tell you, people used to say that Project Spark was limited and you couldn't do very much in it, and it was difficult. And it was like any game mechanic that I tried to recreate that I couldn't get something done. Pretty much everything could be done. I think Dreams is going to be the same. I don't think there's any game mechanic that you're definitely not going to be able to. Well, there might be some things that you definitely can't do. I mean, there's no opacity.
Yeah, like MMOs
for shape.
It's
things like that.
It's confirmed you can't do an MMO in Dreams because it's
anything with lots and lots of characters. You're not going to be able to do either.
We'll see about that.
I have a theory.
I am determined to get lots of characters in a scene. I'm going to see if I can do it.
I have a theory. I want to try something. I've got this really great idea of randomizing faces on a villager so that you can pop it in and it will create a whole village of people, and it's only one character, so it's really small in the thermo. Mm-hmm. I think that will work really well. But I have got to experiment with that.
I saw you two debating on the forums like how like cloning worked when really stressing like the thermometer and stuff. Is it still kind of unknown like how the thermometer works in Dreams and what makes it explode, or have we figured it out now?
I think on that particular issue, we each kind of saw something while we were using it in different capacities, and then we were just trying to figure out how both visions fit into the same framework. And I think we're going to have to get back into the game before we really come to that.
Yeah,
I'm pretty confident that we're both right, which seems ridiculous because we can't both be right about this. But I think we're both right. What I think the thing about the thermometer is that everybody is trying to find out where the limits are. Because you think, well, okay, once I know how many objects I can put in the level, that will help me. Once I know how many gadgets I can stick in, how many characters I can put in, that will help me, that will help me. And actually, it's probably it's an interesting thing to know, but I don't think it's actually going to help you build a decent level. Because technique is probably more important than numbers, knowing the numbers. It's how to make things with the thermo, I think, is going to be the big thing, is how to make something as with the smallest amount of thermo possible using technique rather than which you can put in your level. Because I think it's a different thing.
One thing about that discussion we're having about how many scopes can fit into a level and how groups affect the thermometer and all that was that it happened before the tweet by Media Molecule that the thermometer doesn't stack. And that was just a nuclear bomb on pretty much everything that we were talking about. So, we were kind of looking at it from a standpoint of not having all the information. Now we have this new information, and now we need to get back into the game and see how that works.
Why the thermo doesn't stack.
Yeah, so like what they were saying was, if you put enough scopes into a level, into the scene, you'll get to 100% gameplay thermo, right? So if you have no scopes and you have a bunch of logic in there, you'll hit 100% thermo. So that if you hit the thermo limit with logic and then try to put a sculpt in, it doesn't work. But it's actually, there's a limit for sculpts, there's a limit for logic, there's a limit for like 16 different things. And you can hit all of them at the same time without going over.
Well, the thing is, I found that you can go over the thermo, you can go maximum, you can go right over it and carry on. Your heart's content, you just can't save it.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's not interesting. It was a bloody nightmare because that's what I made. I made a house and I couldn't save it.
Oh, that's like that was not the case with the Little Big Planet games. It would stop you from placing anything else. So it seems like they got rid of that, but then you're
early on in the beta, so they might have changed it. But I went to 130% on the graphic thermo.
There should probably be a warning at least.
I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there is a warning or something glows red on the UI. There has to be, but I don't know. I didn't build that.
If you got it up, only if you got it on. If you don't have the thermo thing ticked.
Oh, I wouldn't know.
Well, no, there's nothing to warn me, was there?
Oh, okay.
I didn't have the number up because I didn't think that building this little house was going to max out my thermo, because that would be ridiculous, right? Because I was making this house out of 6 different blocks. There's no way possibly that could possibly overwhelm I don't know what I did, but I maxed out my thermo, and then I couldn't save it. And so I started deleting parts of the house. The whole back of the house went. Looked at my thermo. It hadn't moved. Same. It was like, oh my God, what? Oh, I don't understand. And it was the most frustrating few hours because I couldn't save it, change it. So I think, I don't know what I did in the end.
Just gave up, maybe. That's what I would have done. I would have been like, screw this.
I'd spent hours making this thing. No, it's weird situation. I hate the thermo, but that's things that you have to play with. But my concern about the thermo actually is that, as far as I can tell, I might be wrong in this, but this sounds right. The graphics thermo, all objects are going to be 1%. Is that right? There's no way of getting an object less than 1%, because that's.
No, I haven't figured that out, and I wanted to mess with it. So that's probably one of the first things I'm going to do on the 16th is.
Yeah.
Exactly what's going on with that. And a couple other things that have to do with graphics thermo and gameplay thermo as far as sculpts are concerned. So I'll let you know as soon as I figure that out.
So let's say it's 1%. That means the maximum amount of unique objects that you can put in your level is 100.
It would be if 1% is the minimum. But I think what happens is if the actual cost is less than 1%, it still reports as 1% as long as it's over 0.
Exactly. That's something I would like Media Molecule to give us, and that is an advanced thermometer meter that gives you proper numbers. That would be good.
This goes into the stacked thermal, where a real thermometer would show you all of the different stacks, and I think it has to go at least 1 point past the decimal to give you a little bit more granularity on the reporting. So instead of it saying 50%, it would say like 50.5%. You a little bit more of the cost of individual things.
Yeah, and it's a geeky thing, but I mean, I think there are a lot of people out there that would like a little bit more information on the thermometer.
Yeah,
that with them we're getting at the moment. With
if you already have people like asking for keyboard and mouse support, I'm sure like a screen that goes into huge detail over what's in the level and how much space in the thermometer is taking up and why. And like giving if you can go below 1%, like decimals, like very specific statistics, that would be super helpful for people who want to get the most out of Dreams as an engine.
I'm kind of torn about these details too, though, because the number one thing really that I want to see before anything else is worked on is online multi, because I think that absolutely makes or breaks Dreams is a title, because online multi are the games that people want to play.
Yep, and make too. I want to make multiplayer games in Dreams.
Now, this is a mistake that Project Spark made. They left it a long time before we got multiplayer. Really long time in before we got it, and I am a little bit concerned we're not getting it. Are we getting it with launch? Do we know that?
Not multiplayer.
No, it's going to be after launch. Another thing about the multiplayer implementation,
we don't know how long,
is that it needs to be good, because Project Spark's multiplayer implementation was absolutely abysmal. It couldn't have been worse, and actually probably kept people from using it. So it has to be good. It has to allow people to very easily use it. But that's the number one thing I would rather see than them work on anything else, even VR.
Yeah.
Don't you think that Sony are really keen on VR right now? That's what.
There's a lot of theories there's a lot of theories that VR is the reason Dreams is still alive right now. Like, there's a lot of theories like that.
I think Dreams is the PSVR killer app. I think it's part of the reason the game got delayed in 2016, because I think they're like, this is going to launch with VR. Delay. And I think it's got to be in at launch.
Yeah.
They said it was going to. They said it was going to be in with launch. because they said that originally it wasn't going to, and then they changed their mind and said it was. And everybody got excited, and I said, you do realize that the reason they're saying this is because the launch is going to be a lot later than you think it's going to be. And that's how they can put it in, because before they weren't going to be able to put it in because the launch was going to be earlier.
Yep.
That's what I think went on there.
Yeah.
And now I'm not 100% sure we're going to get it this year. I mean, that's how cynical I've got. And I'm amazed, actually, that we're getting early access as early as April, because I was fully prepared for it to be June.
I think if it doesn't release this year, it's really detrimental to the title, because after that, you really start getting close to PlayStation 5.
Yeah.
If it releases near the release of PlayStation 5, that kind of shoots the PS4 version in the foot.
Unless PS5 is backwards compatible, and we just don't know. But that's too much room for speculation. Like that we need some certainty that we're gonna get Dreams the way we were promised.
I gotta say, let's worry about getting Dreams on the PS4 before we start worrying about whether or not it'll be on the PS5.
The other negative for me personally is if it's close to the PS5, I'm gonna have to have a PS5.
Yeah, you guys have to buy another console. Another console that'll collect dust. And
there's no way they're going to have it so that it won't be on the PS5, right? Because that would be ridiculous.
Yeah, that would be crazy. I imagine they'll port it over if it's not.
The more time it's available on PS4 before PS5, the better for me.
Yep, I'd be fine with.
I don't want them to wait. Because if people were saying they think they were going to just completely shelve it and wait for the PS5, and it was like, oh please God, don't let that be the truth, because that could be 2 years. I'm not waiting that long. That's horrendous.
Yeah.
We waited long enough, for goodness sake.
Yeah. But I'm just excited for the 16th. I want to get my hands on the game again. Like literally everyone I've talked to who've been in the beta are having withdrawals. So that's a good sign for Dreams that it's
what's weird
gonna be good.
What's weird for me is that I can't wait to get hold of Dreams, but not to do the things that I thought I would be wanting to do. All I want to do right now is to make some music. What I keep thinking about is like, I want to make some music on Dreams now. I made some before and I really enjoyed it, and I keep thinking of little tunes and thinking, I could put that in Dreams. It's like, I can't yet. No, I have to wait. That's all I want to do right now. I want to make any characters. I don't want to play about with the logic and all the other things that I thought I'd be interested in. No, what I want to do is make music.
You know what that means, though? You know what that means, though?
What?
Music is pretty much the last thing you're going to do when you get a hold of it again.
You think?
No.
I said we couldn't make music on Project Spark. This is the one creative element that I could never show off any skills in, because you just couldn't. There was just no way to do it in Project Spark. It was rubbish, the music stuff. So the Dreams music tool is just brilliant. I just love it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I saw that at PSX 2017 when they revealed it, and what is it, a year and a half later now, it still blows me away what it's able to do as far as audio goes.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of musicians on Twitter praising it, just being like, if I had this when I was like in high school, I would explode, because it's everything you need to create music. You don't have to buy all these pedals. You don't have to buy an instrument. It's all there for you. In one, right now I think it's like $30 package.
Plays the music. That's the only thing. Nobody's really interested in hearing your music stuff. So
there was one really good piece of music. I think it's just because we need, like, a lot of the music we saw in the beta was like people recreating like Animal Crossing songs, or people just making nice little like gameplay tunes. There was one song that someone created. I wish I remembered the name of it, but it actually sounded like a production, like something you would hear in mainstream today. And that one actually like blew my mind. I went because it was like you can use it inside a level. I immediately put it inside a Dream just so I could look at it and scope into like all the different channels that they use to see like how they made them. And like they had vocals in there, so I wanted to see what they did with their own vocals. It was really cool. So once we get more of that kind of stuff, I think music is going to really explode in Dreams, and it's actually going to be like a viable platform to make that kind of content. But so we're coming up. We're slowly approaching 2 hours now. Is there anything you guys wanted to add to the podcast? Any burning thoughts you want to share?
Know if Lucid Stu thinks that the logic in Dreams is better, worse, or just different to what we have in Project Spark.
You know, I was thinking about this before the podcast because I've heard a lot of people over the last few years say that you can't compare Project Spark and Dreams, which is just a ridiculous concept. But one of the things that Project Spark was better at was logic. Because
thank God.
we had
I thought I was on my own.
Project Spark had several variable types and was very powerful. When if we ever got an array like a lot of people wanted, it would have been fairly indistinguishable from pro scripting. The Dreams logic is very limited, and I think you can accomplish a lot of those things in a roundabout way by working with it. But overall, yeah, Project Spark was a little bit more powerful. That said, with Dreams, you can still do a lot, and you can do pretty much anything you're going to think of.
Yeah. That's funny because I was just going to mention real quick. In Dreams, the logic is way more complicated than it was in LVP. So it sounds like all the LVP fans are happy with the new logic system, but apparently the Project Spark fans are looking for a little bit more from it.
Well, put it this way.
I'd like to see some more variable types.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. The loss of variables, because Project Spark was based very heavily on being able to create a number variable or an object variable or a text variable or something, and we've lost that. Dreams doesn't have that capacity, so I can't pick. I can't create an object variable that's saying, okay, this character, if this character walks into this, then this becomes, this object variable is now this character in Dreams very easily. And it you have to get around it. I thought I'd do something simple and that's simple in Project Spark and try and do it in Dreams as a test to get into the logic. But I couldn't do it. The techniques that I knew, the things that I knew from Project Spark, I couldn't do them in Dreams. They just didn't exist, and it was frustrating and it was annoying. And it's like I got to throw away everything I know in Project. Well, not everything, but a lot of what I know and how to do things in Project Spark away and learn the Dreams way, which is a lot more complicated and time-consuming, because Project Spark, you've got modules of things, while in Dreams, you're going to have to make that module before you can then work with it. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be the difference.
Part of it is also learning the system. So like in Project Spark, the object variables are pointers to other objects. And you have something similar in Dreams if you use a tag, a pointer to whatever is in that tag. So it works similarly. It's kind of like object variables and object sets in Project Spark all rolled into one. And then another thing about Dreams is in the beta, the inventory gadget was not present. And I think having a bag that we're going to be able to put things into and possibly sort through is going to help out a lot with a lot of more advanced.
It's just that things like random numbers. In Project Spark, I can create a random number on one line of code. Number in Dreams. It's complicated. It's much more difficult to do.
Yeah, they have a randomizer gadget, but it's a little.
Got 10 slots.
Yeah, yeah. That's my main gripe, is that you only have 10 slots right now. But
I mean, I worked out how to do a random number between 1 and 100. Just need 3 randomizer gadgets, but it was like in Project Spark, I could do a range between one number and another number. I could have it as an integer. I could have it as a decimal place to 3 decimal places if I wanted.
yeah,
I can't do that in Dreams. I've got no flexibility to do that whatsoever. Although you could technically do it, the amount of effort involved in trying to do that, you know,
just one line of code versus like a million different
a whole
randomizers.
microchip of stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's the overcomplication, because you haven't got a finished module you're creating at the bottom level. I get the impression that Project Spark is the computer language at the top, while Dreams, you're literally making the motherboard and the
yeah.
You're making the computer that the programming language is going to be on the top of. The difference is mechanical versus more, if you like.
Yeah,
I guess
it's like, I remember there was a ton of discussion about, like, before we even know what the logic looked like, whether it'd be scripting or not. And I guess it seems like, you know, maybe adding a simple, like, script language to Dreams isn't really a bad idea for just, you know, one line of code for a random integer. Because, like, I'm learning how to create stuff in Game Maker right now, and, like, as I'm learning it, I'm making connections to Dreams, and I'm like, I'm feeling kind of the same way. Like, you know, some of the stuff is, like, way easier to do here than Dreams, which is supposed to be the consumer level, you make games easy kind of product. But I guess you can't.
The other thing is that Project Spark made it easy for us, and yet people went into Project Spark and said it's too hard. That bothers me, because if they thought Project Spark was too hard and Project Spark tried to make it as easy as possible, Dreams is going to be a completely impossibility for these people.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much more complicated to do. Well, complicated is the wrong word.
Hard
it's
to
not
learn.
It's complicated. It's more effort.
Yeah, more effort, harder to learn.
To do. And the fact that if I made a bit of code in Project Spark and I wanted to show somebody how to do it, then I just show them the line of code. I go, here is the line of code you type in. Type this in. Doop, 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 doop. Okay? In Dreams, it's a recipe. Right, stamp this, take this wire, put that wire in that socket, turn that to that, and move that. It's a lot more steps to do something that in Project Spark is a simple, here is a line of code. It's much harder. Also, because all of the logic and everything is inside sliders, inside a gadget, you can't just look at there. That's what I've built. Just look at it. You can't just look at it because you can't see it, because it's all hidden of these sliders and things that you can't see unless you open it up. And that's the elegance of Project Spark. From just, you could just take a screenshot and go, just build that, and you'll have it. There you go. You can't do that in Dreams. There's no way you can just take a screenshot of your microchip and say, build that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that point of view that point of view comes from the bias of someone who's pretty experienced with Project Spark. Because I really struggled for a long time trying to learn that, because the syntax is very similar to high-level scripting. If you don't know how to do it, it's not like you're going to look at it and know how to do it. So difficult to learn Project Spark's language. I think it's also probably very difficult to learn LBP's language, like if you don't know anything going into both. And it's also very difficult to go from Project Spark to Dreams type logic because it's so different.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be a very big learning curve either way, just because that's how programming is, whether it's lines of code or like modules, like visual based, kind of what Dreams is doing. So there's going to be a big learning curve. I can see the frustration, like not being able to just copy a line of code and paste it. Like in Dreams, you can't. It's harder to copy and paste unless you like drag the creation into like your level. But I'm thinking if you're watching a YouTube tutorial on it, it's like a lot of like programming YouTube tutorials. They in the description they just have the lines of codes, so you don't even have to type it out. You can copy and paste the lines of code that you need, while they describe to you like what the line of code does. So I can see that being frustrating when like trying to learn stuff. But either way,
the difference between the two is just the flow of logic. Mm-hmm. Where with Project Spark, you just have a list and it goes down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that is your order of logic. With Dreams, you are actually creating the flow of logic. So if you're used to that being done automatically because it's in a list, and then now all of a sudden you actually have to go in and create how the logic flows through everything, that can be a little daunting, and it's something I'm still trying to get comfortable with.
Yeah, I use a lot of counters. Practically, that's the one gadget that I think I used more than anything else was counter for this, counter for that, counter for the next thing, so that I knew that I've done this bit, so this counter goes up, so now I can do this bit. So it's creating a list, if you like. Yeah. So it's like, okay, that's number 1, and now this is number 2, and this is number 3, by using counters. And maybe that's the wrong way, but this is the problem, I think, with when you're so familiar with one language and then you have to learn a new one, which seems on the surface to be the same. Mm-hmm. So you end up doing the wrong thing. Yeah. You're working around it. And I'm a bit concerned. It's like, I want to be able to do the same that I did for Project Spark with Dreams. And I want to be able to make tutorials and share my knowledge and all the rest of it. And I am a little bit worried at the moment that all this Project Spark knowledge that I have is actually getting in the way. Might be actually detrimental of me actually telling people how to do things, because I might be telling them completely the wrong way, because there's a better way of doing it and I haven't worked it out because I'm still thinking like somebody playing Project Spark.
Yeah, but you know what the main thing is, and I bought Little Big Planet 3 specifically so that I could kind of learn how the logic process worked. And when I started really getting into it and looking at what people had done, which, by the way, people have made some unbelievable things with Little Big Planet 3. I realized I'm like 6 or 7 years behind the curve, and I'm never going to catch up to try. And that's part of it. It's you have people who are very used to it. And these are the people in the beta who have made things that you just can't believe they've done it in 6 or 7 weeks. They know how to do it. We have to learn. And part of that is listening to them and learning from them, because they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to actually see.
I'm not hearing them there.
I'd be interested to see like like the way you use counters, because like using them in the list like that is actually like kind of brand new to me. I never thought about like how, like the order that logic was executed in, just because I'm so used to the Little Big Planet games. So like I'd be interested to see like a logic piece you'd make, like using that kind of list system, and like maybe how I'd create it and like make it like a remix or something. Like I feel like doing stuff like that would like kind of help with getting used to this like new format that you're not familiar with. And then I learned how to use counters.
There are also new ideas that, you know, we can bring in, and other people who aren't familiar with LBP logic can bring in. Like Media Molecule was talking about how they kind of handed over to some people, and the people who weren't familiar with LBP actually had a little bit easier time, because they would do things like use action recorders to do things that you would normally use with gadgets. So it's kind of the same thing with coming over from Project Spark. We probably have something to add to that, even though we still have a lot to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
definitely.
So
least of all, the prop thing, because we didn't have the ability to make our own props in any way other than to take assets that we already had and then sort of mix them together in some weird way. I'll be interested to see if anybody ever tries to do that with some of the assets that people are making in Dreams, because we're going to end up with something rather interesting, I think. And I haven't seen anybody do it yet.
Yeah, like
set.
Yeah, like
and another asset, and
yeah, just a mishmash of assets to make something new.
I've actually done the opposite, where in some of the work that I've done, the sculpts that I made were actually groups, and then I ripped apart the group and I used the different pieces inside the sculpt to do different things within the level. And because it was all in the original sculpt, it was basically free of graphics cost.
Yeah. I think we're used to things out of things that don't look anything like what we actually want, but ending up with something that looks roughly like what we want. It's a weird thing. People seem to think that Project Spark you only had the assets that they gave us, and therefore you didn't have much flexibility. But I mean, you could make anything out of those assets that they gave you. It was quite extraordinary what people were making. Yeah. Having said that, the fact that I can sculpt something in Dreams is just a joy. So yeah. I don't want to go back to Project Spark. I can't play Project Spark anymore. I can't. I've stopped.
Dreams is going to spoil you with all these custom objects you can make.
It's ruined me. I can't play Project Spark anymore. Yeah. I literally can't. I can't remember the controls. I keep trying to move things in the wrong way, and I got so frustrated with it. I was like, stuff it. I'm not playing it anymore. I'll wait for Dreams now.
Yeah,
and that's upset an awful lot of people.
Your wait is almost over.
Yeah, 16th. It's like what, 16 days away now. It's the 31st now. So like 16 and a half days away. But so
who's counting?
Oh, no one's counting. No one cares about Dreams. What are you talking about?
Counting, nobody cares. What?
But so let's go ahead and finish it up. As we said, the early access for Dreams releases on the PlayStation Store April 16th. It's going to be a first come, first serve, where they're going to have more people allowed in this early access than there were in the beta. But again, the spacers are going to fill up really fast. A lot of people weren't able to get in the beta who wanted to be. So I'd recommend waking up super early in the morning on the 16th and just keep refreshing that page until it comes up so you can throw money at it. But until then...
I'm 8 hours ahead of everyone.
Yeah, it's going to be a race. I'm going to race you, both of you. But, it's like the Hunger Games, but people actually want to be in it. So Media Molecule is still at PAX East. It's actually the last day over there. So if you want to see what happened the 4 days that they were there, go ahead and follow their Twitter. That's at Media Molecule. And I'll also put a link down in the description for where to sign up for updates for the early access that's going to release on the 16th. So until then, we just got 16 more days to wait. I'm going to be nice and patient, but go ahead and check out Lady Lex. It was dreamschool.co.uk. I saw a couple tutorials on there already describing some of the gadgets. I think that website's really cool, Lex. And you can also go to Lucid Stew's YouTube channel. He actually has a Q&A for one of the bigger levels that were in the beta. It was Big Surf you had a Q&A with, right?
And I'm also going to be posting one with Beavis too pretty soon on Dreambubble and also the subreddit.
Awesome. I'll go ahead and have links for those in the description as well for when you post those. But thank you so much, everybody, listening to this podcast. Got into a lot of really deep conversation on this one. I love it. Go ahead and keep up with Dreambubble for all the latest Dreams news and creations. And we'll see y'all on the next podcast. Goodbye, everybody.